can you still use older versions of Windows in 2023? Let's find out. As of 2023, only 2 official versions of Windows are currently supported, and those systems are Windows 10 and Windows 11, the latter of the 2 being newer and receiving feature updates. However, plenty of organizations, poor countries, and some home users are still sticking with decades-old versions such as Windows 8.1, Windows 7, even Windows Vista and XP are still being used in some parts of the world. Armenia most famously still uses XP on 57% of their total PCs. So why isn't everyone moving to a more modern version like Windows 10 or Windows 11? Well, keep in mind that as home users can often upgrade for free, but because Windows 11 needs very new hardware, this has caused lots of confusion for lots of people, and some people have been put off by this. But that does not mean you cannot use Windows 10, you should absolutely upgrade to Windows 10, to be receiving important security fixes, Patch Tuesday updates, bug fixes, and Windows 10 will still receive at least 3 more official feature updates before it finally reaches its end of support in October 2025. Windows 11 can run unofficially on older hardware, but Microsoft strongly advise against this, and they could pull the plug on machines running Windows 11, that are actually not on the official list of supported machines. So that means Microsoft will make those machines obsolete, so you really do have to have the money for a new PC if you want Windows 11. Other operating systems also exist however, so if you don't want to stay with Windows, you should look at one of the 3 other options. macOS is great if you can afford Apple products, but Macs often have less software written for them overall than Windows. They are notoriously bad for gaming, and Apple force you to be locked within their ecosystem. Much like Microsoft, you cannot install Linux on the newer M1 type Macs. Only Intel-based Macs can run Linux as of right now. Speaking of Linux, why don't you look at something like Chrome OS, Google's flagship operating system for laptops and desktops, also known as Chromebooks and Chromeboxes. These devices are quite a bit cheaper than your average PC or laptop. Chromebooks are also tied into the Google ecosystem, so if you are a user of G Suite, or need access to Google stuff, why not look at using a Chromebook or Chromebox? This being said, Chrome does not run high-end desktop apps designed for blockbuster movie production, nor can it run AAA games, so you should only plan on buying one if you want to just browse the web, watch some Netflix, or just doing basic computing tasks in general. Another operating system you could look into is Linux, but given how many people are afraid to use Linux, simply due to the complexity involved when using it, most people will reject that option, but some people, like myself, can easily transition to Linux, mostly because I use free and open source stuff. Only a small 2 to 3% of programs I use will not work on Linux, but I do not rely on every Windows program I have, so for someone like me, you too may find it easy to migrate to Linux, but before you do, you really need to find the right distro for you. Ubuntu and Linux Mint are the absolute best ones to look at using, simply because they provide a very user-friendly experience for Linux noobs, and you can do some gaming on Linux, still more limited due to Linux not having a lot of market share, but you can do it, and if you do need to run some Windows-specific stuff, Wine will work, but only for basic to intermediate apps. Anything above that just does not work under Wine, or crossover, so you really need to think about these things before you choose to migrate to Linux. Aside from that, there really is no other operating system I can recommend, because BSD is far too tricky to use for a beginner who just wants to do basic tasks on their PC, and Android and iOS are specifically for phones and tablets, which are not as powerful as a PC. Mind you, they have gotten pretty good in recent years, but PC users will most likely want to stay with Windows, and if you are using a defunct version, you really need to think about jumping to Windows 10, and if your hardware can officially run Windows 11, that's great, you might as well go straight to 11 if that's the case, but many PCs right now are in strife. Due to them not meeting the minimum requirements, only the newest of computers from big-name brands are running Windows 11, the majority of most countries uses Windows 10, and that's because organizations tend to not upgrade their machines for many years, as the product licensing fees and upgrading of computers is so incredibly expensive, which then leaves them in the situation of running outdated operating systems, thus increasing risk of getting ransomware, or some nasty malware. It really goes to show you how bad using unsupported operating systems really is. If you are on Windows 7 or 8.1, you can still use Mozilla Firefox until sometime in 2024. Mozilla officially announced they will still provide browser updates for Firefox through 2024, and as we know, Chrome and Edge no longer support these systems, so you should go to Firefox just to be a bit safer, and maybe look at other browsers like Opera or Midori, as they may also still support Windows 7 and 8.1. You should really use antivirus on any OS. Even Windows 10 and 11 can be spoofed without too much hassle, and they can still get infections too, so it's far worse for defunct operating systems like Windows 7 or 8.1, as they have not been receiving any sort of updates for ages. Also, major software developers of stuff like Steam will drop support for Windows 7 and 8.1 in January 2024, and lots of other software has already dropped support, because these systems are now defunct. So it really is important that you go down the path of upgrading to a modern OS, otherwise you're stuck in a hole and you cannot get out of it, because you dug so deep into the thought of newer versions of Windows being so bad. Now you're the fool sitting in the corner using Windows 7. Just kidding, that was just a joke I made up, but if you don't want to end up like the fool in the corner, you really should see what option suits you best, because using defunct systems is a massive hole in your online security, and you will be more likely to get infected using Windows 7 or 8.1. And if you're still hanging on to Windows XP or Vista, you're either a complete fool who has no idea about computers, or you don't care about running outdated apps and software, and not receiving critical security fixes pushed out by Microsoft. You can use these legacy systems inside a virtual machine. That will be a lot safer than using it on real hardware, and you also would want to keep them offline. Don't ever use defunct systems on networks, they are a massive target for hackers. You really need to think outside the box, and see if you can upgrade to Windows 10 or 11, otherwise, you'll have to make do with that 13-year-old operating system, or the one from 2013 that was a complete and total flop. And I'm sure no one wants to be up shit creek without a paddle, so if you want to be safe, you must upgrade to a supported OS. No operating system is safe. Even Linux and BSD can become infected with ransomware and viruses, so it's crucial you take the steps necessary to stay safe, especially since we live in the day and age of zero-day vulnerabilities. No antivirus will protect you from that sort of thing, so stay safe, and have a good one. Bye for now.